Hey everybody, spoilers for Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. I'm John. I'm joined again by Asim to talk about Dunkirk. This is the next in our series of discussions about Christopher Nolan's films. Easily my favorite series of discussions here. Don't tell Brad or Marcus. Before we get into all that, do check out our website, scriptdepartment.net, to see what our global network of screenwriters are up to. You can see script readings there from people like Alan Leach and Pip Torrens and so on. Also, hit us up on social media. Just hit the links in the description. And if you haven't, subscribe to our podcast. Just search for The Script Department, wherever you get your podcasts, for daily discussion videos like this. Asim, Dunkirk. What was your experience of watching Dunkirk for the first time?
It was like a new window to Christopher Nolan's kind of mental way of showing us something new, something different, something that doesn't have a lot of layers of philosophy, doesn't have a lot of layers of thematics that's actually been embedded, and it's very light to watch. I think it's it's one of the shortest films that he ever created until now. So it was a fun watch.
Do you consider it a good war film?
I don't think it's very war. More, it's about capturing the moment, about that event, which means so much for the British people, and also in that time in World War II, and how it's actually affected, and how a lot of things are dependent on that kind of rescue. And what I love about that, he showed the people what they actually are trying to participate to be part of the rescue kind of mission, when they actually use their own boats, personal boats, to go and save these soldiers, because in the end they are one. And when all the soldiers think that they actually failed and they are going to be humiliated, everyone is cheering for them and giving them beers. It was really the some kind of a way, a very good psychological impact that happened to the soldier after that. They were expecting something bad, but when they actually arrive, it's the opposite. And I love that, how it actually plays so much on emotions. And I think that's what the most thing about the film. It's also about emotions.
Hmm. Yeah, my first experience watching Dunkirk was I went to see a special screening. It was a 35mm screening. Mark Kermode, the film critic, was hosting it. And it was my first time going to one of these events, and it was packed. And I was in the one cinema in the world that didn't have cup holders and in the chairs. And I stupidly bought, because I assumed this is a Christopher Nolan film. It's going to be 3 hours long. It's a war film, so one would expect it's definitely going to be a long film. This was a group of people stranded there for a week or something. I mean, you expect, if there's any Christopher Nolan film that's going to hit the 3 hour mark, this is going to be the one. And I remember I said, well, I might as well get my giant Coke and popcorn. And apparently the etiquette at these types of screenings is that you don't get the junk food. You just sit there and you watch the film, because it's like a special screening or whatever. But here I was, only guy in the room with my giant Coke, my giant popcorn, sitting there cramped in the middle between all these other people. And you couldn't put them anywhere because there was no cup holders or anything. And I couldn't put them on the ground in front of me because people were walking past and they would have just kicked it over. And so I'm sitting there. Now, that wouldn't have been a problem if it hadn't been the loudest film in the world. And there were moments where people in the audience were covering their ears, and I couldn't cover my ears, and I was just praying for the film to end. And it was such a shame, because that was my experience of watching this Christopher Nolan film, his first foray into war movies. And I just wanted it to end, because I was going deaf in the movie theater.
Yeah.
And thank God it's as short as it is. Now, when I went back and rewatched it again soon after, because I went and rewatched it again properly so that I could actually try and enjoy it this time. No junk food this time. And I really loved it. Like, I really found it very special, and found it very, very clever as well. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the reason I asked you, do you think it's a good war movie, is because I mean, it's definitely a war movie. I mean, there's no question. But I don't feel like that's what attracted Christopher Nolan to it. I feel like what attracted him to this story is the idea that it's almost like you're capturing chaos in a bottle. It's this overview of chaos, of just total chaos from different perspectives. It's things are going wrong, people are panicking. Um, you know, the vultures are hovering up above. In this sense, the fight, the planes overhead, circling overhead and bombing them and stuff like that, and doing the raid, the kind of the dives and stuff. It feels less like a war movie to me and more like a scramble. And it's all of Nolan's films do have a kind of experimental kind of nature to them, in the sense of like, what's the experiment here? The experiment is, can we achieve this, or can this person do this? Can Batman defeat the Joker without breaking his own rules? That kind of thing. And in this, it feels like the experiment is, how will people behave in this scenario? Will they turn on each other? Will they throw in the towel? Will they find an ingenious solution out of it? That kind of thing. And it's, will they give up hope? Will people step up and do the right thing, and come and help them? And, it's really, I think, a really interesting film that really is far more than a war movie. It really does explore the human condition and the human mindset in such moments, I think. Yes. Better than a lot of war movies do.
Yeah.
So
he really focused on the characters and how they behave and their mental and psychological situation at that moment, and also the impact that happens to them during the course of the film, and how that's actually making them much more losing faith and losing self-esteem as well, but they are still having that small glimpse of hope that they will be be rescued. So that's one of the best things about this movie. It's just about humans. It's not about who won the war, who did. It's about how human being acts in a very tough situation like this one. And yeah.
And I'm really glad you mentioned at the beginning as well, the way this film ends is people assuming they're going to be berated, or that they're going to be scolded, or that people are going to be throwing things at them on the street because we failed in some way. And it's not. It's, we're delighted that you came home. And it's almost like it's almost like just a way more positive version of like the prodigal son story. It's that you will always be welcomed back. Don't ever doubt that, And I know there's been, when soldiers came back from Vietnam, they were spat on the streets and stuff like that in America. There's been so many movies made about that, the kind of the reaction of people to soldiers coming back from Vietnam and so on. I mean, I think the Rambo series was kickstarted off the back of that, let alone other movies. But this is definitely one of those ones where it's, it's a celebration of survival, and being able, and having survived, and I think that's, it's a really uplifting film by the end, I think. So visual storytelling is key here. There is so little dialogue, and what dialogue there is isn't really that paramount to the experience. I think Tom Hardy probably has some of the most useful dialogue in the story, just because of the fact that he's describing, he's describing stuff that you can't really, that's hard for us to make out, because it's, it's hard to know where you are when the plane is flying that fast, or, when he's running out of fuel, or, he's scribbling stuff on with a pencil on the glass on the, the altimeter, the fuel gauge and stuff like that. And to me, this is his most visual movie, his most visually important film. It might not have the same spectacle that some of his other movies have. It definitely has spectacle. But how did the visuals kind of, I don't know, how did you I don't know, how did that affect you, or how
It
did
actually
you?
it's different than if you see it alone without saying that this is a Christopher Nolan movie. Yeah, there is the taste, there is that kind of sentiment, that fingerprints about Nolan, but still, it's not like Tenet, it's not like The Dark Knight, it's not like these prestige. There's a huge, uh, you know, special effects in every scene. This one is much more pure. It's much more raw. It's much more about even. I think it's the first time he uses natural sunlight and natural light in shooting this one, instead of like the artificial lights that's been shot in the studios. um I think that he may be like he's focusing more on not just about humans, but also about time. Still, there is that signature time thing about Nolan. In Interstellar and Batman, and every time it's always about time. And this one was very clear with maybe Tom Hardy as as a pilot, and he's looking at, and the time is equivalent to the fuel gauge. So it's like he's replacing the time with the fuel gauge. It is time. So this is a really good one that make you much more appreciate also the details of the costumes, to be honest with you. I spent so much time about, okay, they did it so perfectly. They brought the entire costumes like in 1945. So it's very accurate. It is, even the way they are shooting the guns at that time, the airplanes, all these are helping individuals as well.
Well, you expect nothing less as well from Nolan with that. I mean, I'm pretty sure he used real World War II fighter planes at one point. Like some of it, there is some CGI, but he minimizes so much of that. And I think it is, when you look at what he does in that film, it is amazing that he's able to. Yeah, I mean, it is incredible the way he makes that. You touched on the structure of the story. You touched on time. Really glad you did that. To me, the structure of this film is one of the best, one of the most. It's one of his most awe-inspiring creative decisions he's ever made, I think. And I know that sounds like such a bold statement when you think about all the stuff he's done. I think I may have mentioned this in our Christopher Nolan discussion. I was working on a project years ago. It was about another famous boat lift in history, and we couldn't figure out how to make this work in a way where it wasn't just people going back and forth collecting people, where it wasn't just a film about people waiting to get collected. How do you make this interesting? How do you make this where you're covering the back and forth all day of these boats going back and forth? How do you do that in a way where it's just not repetitive? How do you do it in a way where it's just not from the perspective of a group of people waiting and a group of people traveling? At a certain point, that's predictable, and if you're trying to be historically accurate, it's probably not going to be as exciting as you think it will be. And I remember when I saw Dunkirk and I saw the way they structured that story. 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. I mean, it blew my mind. Like, I thought I could have worked on this project till I was 100 and I would never have come up with that model. And I just stopped working on that project. I just thought, that's it. He's done it. There's no way. If I copy that, if I emulate that, I'm just ripping off Dunkirk. Dunkirk is it. It is the definitive boat lift movie, and there are many other boat lift stories out there. This is the definitive one, the definitive rescue mission film, because of the way he uses that structure. You can't have Tom Hardy up in the plane for a whole week. That's just not credible, right? It's not possible. You can only have him up there for an hour. But you can't just show the characters for an hour either, because that's just not reflective of what their journey is on the beach. And you can't just rush through you can't just have the Dawson and George and so on racing across in their pleasure boat across the the channel in record time in order to fill in that hour. Like, you can't just do that. Even if you did the film in an hour or 2 hours, or in real time, or it's just not reflective of that. And he's found a way to be truly reflective of the time and the journey. And he's also by showing it from different perspectives of different windows of time. So that we will when we're seeing Tom Hardy, it's only representative of 1 hour. When we're seeing Tommy on the beach, it's only representative of 1 week. And when we see Cillian Murphy on the boat being rescued, it's only representative of 1 day. But the way he cuts in and out of that, he doesn't over-explain it. He just gives a little bit of credit, a little bit of explanation in text at the beginning. 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. And then it's on you then to keep track of it for the rest of it. And if you lose track of time, that's okay, because guess what? Everybody lost track of time. You not being able to keep up with what's what is more representative of probably what they were experiencing on the beach. What day is it?
Exactly.
And if you do follow along, well, then great. You're just in for this really complex cerebral experience. I think this, in terms of, I don't think this is his masterpiece film. I think it's pretty up there. But I do think that if Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan are, if they're the people we talk about when we talk about, interesting structure and interesting pacing and all that kind of stuff in movies now and television, I think this is the case study. And a great case study for why story structure isn't just about keeping an audience entertained. It's also such a valuable part of helping to communicate the character's experience as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I love the structure of it. Okay, so we got 3 stories. We talked about 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. 1 week is from the perspective of Tommy on the beach, and he's just basically trying to survive on the beach for a week. And this is a really frightening experience when you think about it. We've got pot shots from snipers in the town. We've got the planes circling overhead like vultures, and everybody's terrified that there's going to be another shooting, kind of that they're going to come down and just open fire on everybody on the beach. They're just toying, like the enemy are just toying with them, like that. Talk to me about that side of the story. To me, it feels like it takes up a huge chunk of the movie, actually. Is it? Or are we getting equal screen time across the way?
And no, to be honest with you, I think the 1 week takes almost 60% of the film. And it's actually dissected into also Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, like the typical ones, but it's actually intervene with the other 1 day and one hour. So the other 2 stories is also dissected into 3 acts as well. So you see the first act here, the first act here, and then the first act here, and it's actually simultaneously going to be Act 2, Act 2, Act 2, Act 3, Act 3, Act 3. But I think he spent so much time in the week because this is where he want to focus more on those people who are maybe struggling the most to get to the other side and get rescued, and also trying to get us into that momentum and psychological impact that happens during all that week, and what happens to them from bombing and from having snipers, and also trying also just to do your simplest things, just to have a rest, or even it doesn't happen to them. And every time Tommy goes from one side to the other, he actually encounter another thing, another event, like the soldier on the beach, when he saw someone covering the other, like trying to bury him. He went and try and helped him instead of asking what happened. And he never, and that other guy is a French guy, but he actually took on the British guy's soldier's uniform so he can be rescued. And it didn't end well for him. I think the guy from One Direction actually tied his leg somehow and to make him drown in the end. But
Yeah.
I think the way that as a
I'm not
soldier.
laughing at the. I'm sorry. I'm not
Yeah,
laughing at the fact that he drowned him. It's the
yeah,
idea that there's a guy from One Direction in this movie, isn't it? Harry
yeah.
Styles, is it?
Yes, yeah.
It.
And I
Yeah.
mean, he's just shouting. I mean, and it's just to say, "Oh, I am here." But I like, the way they buried that guy on the beach, without any words. It's just their eyes looking at each other. They understand the mission. They understand what they have to do, and then they try to find a way to get on the boat, and the only way to do it is just to go and bring someone who's injured and try to get him on board so they can actually be on board. And all that, you're going and you're trying, and you're with them, and the boat is going, and it's like you've been in that situation one day when your flight actually went out, and you lost your flight, and one day, and you're just running in
Yeah.
in the corridor, just try to get your plane. And um, we've been in experiencing that kind of thing as humans, but for them, as a war thing, it's much more devastating. And also, the people who are waiting for the one day or trying to get through this one day, it's also a hell on earth for them. What I really kind of connected with more is the 1 hour, because 1 hour you can, you know your mind can actually calculate that. Okay, 1 hour, I know I have this amount of fuel that will save me for at least 45 minutes until I get my mission done. And the worst scenario is that the fuel gauge is actually broken, so I have to write it down on on the window so I can keep track of my fuel before I went down. So it's really interesting. And we drive cars and all that, so we know with the fuel gauge if it's working or not. So I can connect to him. I can connect
Yeah.
when I'm trying to find the next petrol station, and I know it is the yellow light you have to fill up. So um and it's much more realistic for me, I think. The one week I couldn't, you know be with them that much. I think because it drags so much, that kind of take me out of the experience. But the one day, the 1 hour, yeah, I was with them from the beginning, and I understand what happened. And Killian Murphy is it? Yeah,
Yeah, we'll talk about the story on the boat because in a bit, just because I think that's the real surprise of the film, actually. But the just on the beach and Tommy and so on. So you've got this guy who's barely out of school, it seems, and he's just kind of plodding along trying to get through the day, really, and he's just killing time, and God knows how long they've been there already waiting. And it's just one thing after another, really, isn't it? I mean, it feels like it's one long day for them, when you're watching it, but actually, when you kind of recalibrate your thinking near the end of the film, and you kind of resituate it, you realize this has been a very long week, and they managed to sneak onto a ship, that's a military ship that's been sent to pick them up. Then the ship gets torpedoed, and you see so many people drowning, uh, and he's able to get out. He's able to escape. Um, yeah, he's makes friends with Harry Styles' character. The casting of that did throw me. It did feel like you've got all of these characters, all of these actors who have this ability to just blend in. I I couldn't tell you where I've seen that actor from before. I couldn't tell you where I've seen that actor from, and that's fine. It feels like they're real soldiers. And then you've got like Kenneth Branagh. He's the general or the commander or the admiral or whoever, because he's in charge, because he's the most recognizable face. That Cillian Murphy, when he pops up, is somebody to take note of, because um, he always plays such rich, interesting characters. He always plays such emotionally troubled characters as well. He's able, when he's in, like, he is literally one of the most, psychotic characters in the Batman movies. And then he's also the one with the most emotional kind of troubles, really. At least it kind of is presented as such in Inception, for example. And in this movie, you think, okay, I got to pay attention to this. But with Harry Styles, it did feel like you've just taken one of the biggest musicians in the world. It was almost like when David Bowie popped up in Prestige. But it didn't matter in Prestige
Yeah.
because he's playing Tesla. He's playing a guy you're supposed to like. Okay, we're among company here. This is a somebody you listen to. You don't talk. You listen. But with Harry Styles, I just thought, and I have no problem with Harry Styles as a musician or as an actor or anything, and he's very good in this. Don't get me wrong, but it did take me a while to just kind of every time he popped up, I was like, yeah, it's you. And I also remember in the screening, people giggling when they would see him because you could tell people were kind of elbowing each other and nudging each other and making jokes to their friends about that's Harry Styles. And so I wasn't big on that casting choice, but I did think they did very well the story of survival, the desperation of survival, and yeah, the idea of the French soldier pretending to be so he can get away. I mean, imagine how bad it must be if you're doing things like that. So I really got the sense of fear. I got the sense of dread. I got the sense of there's a beautiful shot that doesn't get enough attention when people show Dunkirk, and it's the soldier getting up and walking into the sea. He just gets up. So Tommy is sitting on the beach, and he's just sitting there, just staring out. I think he might be trying to eat some food or whatever, and he's just staring out at the water. And then there's a soldier in front, and I may be remembering it wrong. Maybe he even takes off his uniform and just kind of strips down, just walks into the water. But anyway, he might not, I don't know. But there is a character who just gets up and just walks out into the water, never to be seen again. And it's just a really kind of just a really tragic moment, that
Yeah.
this series of events has just made people just almost just switch off. Not even it doesn't even feel like they're taking their own lives. It almost feels like they're just switching off, like they're just powering down. The battery has died.
Yes.
We've been here so long. The battery is dead. That's what it felt like. Life is just switching off on this beach bit by bit. It's like lights just slowly, flashlights dying or something. It was just really, there's some beautifully powerful imagery in this film. So the story of George on the boat. So George Barry Keoghan, who now plays Joker and so on, in the new Batman. So he follows his father, the brilliant Mark Rylance, to come to Dunkirk. So they want to acquisition his pleasure boat, I think, and then his yacht or whatever. And then he's like, no, I'm going to do it myself. No one's going to be driving my boat. I'm going to go. And the older brother comes along, and then George, the younger brother, insists on coming along. And he's very much like calling his father sir and all that. And they're on their way, and it's just following the journey of them getting to Dunkirk. It's not coming up and back. It's just them going to Dunkirk. And along the way, George talks about his, do you think we'll be in the papers after this? He kind of, I think, am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
That he
Yes.
wants
Yeah.
he wants to be in the
Yeah.
paper or something. And
Yeah.
and then they meet Cillian Murphy. They pull Cillian Murphy out
Yes.
of the water. So walk me through this side.
It's actually George is actually didn't do anything at school, didn't have anything particular, like he didn't do any kind of achievements, and he was wondering, would they remember us if we did this? Am I going to be in the, he want to impress someone, and we don't know who's this girl or, who he want to impress. But what happened is there's this kind of airplane where it actually falls and killing Murphy in it, and it actually have something to do with George getting his eyes. He loses his eyes, where he actually die in the end.
So yeah, so
Yeah,
Cillian Murphy, I don't think he was a pilot. I think it was just the ship
It's,
went down.
yeah,
I think it
but
was
he
the ship
says,
was torpedoed.
yeah, but he had to do something about why he always asking this question. Is he all right? Is he all right? Like he's feeling that he is the guilty one. He is the guy who caused this kind of effect on George. So, with that being said, I like the character of the father more because he's much more he can stand. If I'm with a group going to save someone, I need someone to lead us like this. Someone who's really understanding the situation of war. He's been in war. The father has been in war, and you can see it in it. And then we know that his older son was a pilot and he got killed. He got killed like even World War II, like a couple of months ago. So this means so much about okay why we're gonna go and save them, why he's doing this, why he wanna risk himself to save these soldiers because he's thinking mentally he's saving his son. You
Yeah,
know,
and
yeah.
isn't it when Tom Hardy and Tom Hardy's uh, partner, because there's this other pilot as well, who he gets shot down, and there's this whole thing of can he get out of the plane uh, before he drowns. And I think as they're flying by, or as one of them is flying by, Mark Rylance's character is saying, "Okay, George, what plane is this?" George knows the name of the plane because the son that their older brother was a pilot. So Cillian Murphy, I think, was brought in as the PTSD. Cillian Murphy was brought in to represent the soldiers that would have suffered from PTSD or that would go on to suffer from PTSD. And it's a very important inclusion in the story because, we're showing, what, as uplifting as the ending of this movie is, it's not over for these people. They'll be going back into battle again soon. And even if this was the end, a lot of those survivors will have PTSD for the rest of their lives. And I think it's a very, I think, emotionally mature decision on Nolan's part to be able to bring in a very talented actor like Cillian Murphy to so accurately represent that. And Cillian Murphy was interviewed, and he did say like there was a lot of responsibility to get that right actually in that role. So they bring him on board, and he's he's shocked that they're going to Dunkirk. He's like, "Why are you going to Dunkirk? You can't. You're holiday sailors, or he has some name for them. Your pleasure hobby sailors or something like that. Your pleasure sailors. You're not soldiers. Go home." And he's just really telling them, just get out of here. Like, what are you doing? We can't go to Dunkirk. And he's very resistant, and he ends up attacking. There's a scuffle, and he hits George, or he pushes George, and George falls to the ground, and he hits his head, and then he's blinded. He eventually succumbs to his injury and dies. And it's a really, it's such a heavy side of the story, side of the movie, because here you have this character who's suffering from PTSD, and you on the one hand want to, like, you really want to help this guy, you really want to, you really empathize with him and the struggle he's going through. Most people will never understand the struggle he's going through, but you're doing your best as an audience to plug into that, and try and stand in his shoes. But at the same time, he's just killed this kid in an accident. I know it's an accident, but I mean, it's manslaughter, right? I mean, there is this real kind of I don't know, just gray area going on here in this story that I don't quite know how to process as an audience member. Um, how did you feel about that whole kind of that kind of component of the story?
Well, actually, it's not just shocking. It's also about how if you are an officer and you just go and kill someone because just for a small fight, it doesn't make any sense. Even if he didn't even kill anyone, or he didn't steal someone, or he didn't even threaten someone, and you're doing the opposite. So I think that's what happened with that situation. And I think George has so much weight on the story from trying to be someone then that opportunity was taken from him. And we know that a lot of people are in his shoes. You know, a lot of people they want to do something, but life is short and they take them. But I was really feeling hard for the father, because now he lost two sons instead of one. So just imagine his position, and he cannot go and take his revenge on Murphy, killing Murphy, because it's just an accident. It's just an accident, as he said it so many times, and he's trying to keep his calm down. He's trying to do his mission. It's like he's on a mission, but at the same time, he don't want to lose his mind about his son. Um, but yeah, for me, I felt with the father so much, because when you are a father, you feel something different than when you're single, or you're trying to get under. When you're, maybe if I saw it as 17, maybe I will be connected to George more than anyone else in the story, because at that age you want to do something, and you want to be someone, and you want to have some impact on the world. But as you
But
grow older,
now
you
you
get.
want to protect others
Exactly.
now.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's how
Um,
I felt with it, and I think with also having Tom Hardy as the pilot, it makes it much more sense, because he's also trying to save and help his other co-pilot, his other pilot, and he's trying also not to bring the enemy airplanes next to the ships, or even the small sails. And we can see it in his eyes when he was seeing all these sailor boats, small sailor, going and trying to rescue, and he was just amazed about the scene. So it's kind of reigniting him that I need to save those people. So I have to do my mission before the fuel goes out. So
yeah. Tom
it's really
Hardy's
interesting.
Tom Hardy's story is, I would liken it to something like Apollo 13, where it's like the I know it sounds like a silly comparison, but the thing I love about Apollo 13 is that it's a problem solving movie. It doesn't have to be set in space. It could be set in the ocean or something. It just is really interesting because it's set in space. And it's okay, we've got, this is the stuff. There's that moment where they lay out all the on the table back at mission control. It's all right, this is all the stuff that they have in their capsule. How can we fix the problem using only this stuff? And it becomes this really interesting puzzle solving movie then. And I love that in Dunkirk. He's in this cabin, in this plane, and he's a great pilot and all that, no question. But he's got a limited amount of fuel. And his fuel gauge is broken. And he uses maths on the side of a window with a pencil in order to be able to figure out how much fuel he's got. And I love that idea of, it's like all of that stuff from like Apollo 13 wrapped up in a small little section of this movie. I've got to problem solve my way through this mission, which is a very simple mission. It's just keep the Germans away from the beach. Just keep the skies clear. That's it. And even when his friend goes down, and you see him trying to get out of the plane, it's again a problem solving moment. The whole film is a problem, is a solution, is a problem waiting to be solved. Can we get off the beach? And we're going to try it from different perspectives. These people on the beach are going to try and get off the beach, and these people are going to try and get to the beach on a boat. But I love that it's all encapsulated in Tom Hardy's drawing, doing little equations on the glass, because that's the film summed up, I think. So Tom Hardy is amazing in this, as he is in almost everything. He has this way of he can communicate with his eyes better than anybody. And when he was Bane, or when he's always got a mask, doesn't he? When he's in those kind of films. To me, the standout moment is when he lands the plane. So everybody's kind of celebrating that they're about to get off, and then Tom Hardy runs out of fuel, and there's the whole question of, all right, is he going to die? And there's like that moment where it's just the engine cuts out, he's gliding, and everybody's just And I remember watching it as an audience member going, "Oh no!" Like, and how they've made us care. Do you think that? Do you think it's great characterization, or do you think it's just that we love Tom Hardy that makes us care in that moment? Like, has he done something as a storyteller to make us really care about this pilot?
Uh, I think it's both, but I think as a character in that movie, I think it's just about him trying to do his job as he's trying to, keep the sky clear, clear the birds. No, we don't want any birds from the enemies, And the way he's doing it, the way he's trying his best, the way he's, maneuver, his professionalism, and also caring for his other pilot, it means so much about him as a character, and also his sacrifice. They are the first people who will get shot. They're if they fall down, that's it. If his plane is dead, then he's dead. You cannot actually rescue him if it's actually burned down. And if we saw his friend or the other pilot where his chair actually jammed, it didn't actually parachute jump, and he's stuck in his belts and everything. So that also can be a hint to what's going to happen to Tom Hardy in his airplane. But I love the way where he actually turn off the engine and he glides, and by the end when he actually destroyed the enemy plane and everyone's cheering for him, but he knows internally he's out of fuel, and the only way to do it is he's going to land in enemy territory. So as soon as he land and he burned it, he's actually been caught. And uh, on the other side, everyone is celebrating him. He's being caught by the enemy. He's now being hostage. So it's kind of all that glory went in after an hour, so it's a good summing up. I like how he is actually didn't care about getting. He's accepting his fate, which is not normal for anyone in his position. He might do a nose job, and drive into them, or try to crash the plane and him inside it instead of getting caught. But it shows that I don't care. Do whatever you want. The important thing, they are safe now. Everyone is back. That's it. So it's like I'm here to do a mission. That's it. I don't care about myself. So that's the thing that relate us to him as a character. And plus, he's Tom Hardy, but as a character, he's the sacrifice. And the hero is always about sacrifice. He's not always about just saving people. He's also about sacrificing himself, like Braveheart. When we saw he did what he had to do, but his sacrifice is what makes him unique. What makes him as a long-lived legend.
Mm.
I think that's how it is. With
I like that it's
Tom
a
Hardy.
sacrifice that doesn't involve him dying,
No.
because
Yeah.
you really want to end this movie on a positive,
Yes.
and him being captured we can accept, because maybe he'll survive, maybe he'll be let go, maybe he'll live out the rest of the war in a prison camp. um we don't know. And I love that there's another movie there that we're not getting, of
Oh,
Tom
okay.
Hardy in a prison camp. I know
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
that would never have been a movie, obviously, but I love that there's another story. There's another chapter to this, and the chapter
Yes.
is what happened next. What happened for
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
character next. Um, yeah. I want to talk about Kenneth Branagh briefly, just because I think his character plays a really interesting role from a screenwriting point of view, and that is he is in many ways the narrator of the piece. He's the witness. He's the observer. He's there right from the beginning, and at the very end, when rescue comes, they're like, "Are you come? Will you come?" And he says, "I'm going to stay right to the end." Um, and to me, that's really indicative of who he is as a character, and what he's um, of what his role is as an audience member. From an audience's perspective.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love him as an actor. I love him as the way he actually represent that character as well. And I remember that when everyone left, everyone actually boarded the ships, and he said, "Are you coming, Kevin?" He said, "No, I'm gonna wait for the French." That means how dedicated he is to not just his people, but also for his allies from another country. It means so much about him as a persona, as a captain, and he deserved his situation. He deserved his place and his rank, and that shows also his sacrifice. It's similar to Tom Hardy. He is also sacrificing himself by staying at the beach, just making sure that everyone is safe until the other allies are coming in, the French, and he can actually help them with that. So that means so much about him as a character, and also, I don't know, there's so much about his eyes when he's looking at him, and how he's looking at the sky when Tom Hardy was turned off his airplane after he actually um, managed to defeat the enemy, and the joy on him, and he's how he's actually remembering every name of everyone he's actually passing by. Where did you come from? Where are you going? It's like he is friendly. He's like a father for everyone. Like, he is the father. He's trying to protect them, and he want to make sure that everyone is safe. Then he will probably come back when he's making sure that there's no one is going to follow us. And that's what fathers do. They're always having that barrier of, okay, I want to save my kids, my children. Then when it's safe, I can come back home. If there's some kind of danger, I will stay and try to fight it. I think that's his position as a captain as well. And we know there will be French coming, and he will be the first one to meet them, and try to make them sure that they will be rescued. He's the comforter. He's the guy who give you comfort, and or a mentor. That's the situation. I love him, having him in that film, because he's also not just also talking about history, but he's also connecting all these three stories together.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
no, absolutely. Yeah, and he's the all-seeing eye, really. He's the one with the binoculars, and he's the one who can, yeah. You mentioned Tom Hardy turning off the engine on the plane. I can't remember that, so remind me. Does he actually take that action, or is it that he runs
yes.
out of fuel?
No, no. He the first time he's actually taking that action after he
Yeah,
defeated the enemy, and he's flying, above the
the
shore.
beach.
He's actually
Yeah.
the beach. He turned it off,
So he
just
just
to
turned,
enjoy
and
it. Mm.
yeah, and it's almost like I'm going to be in control of this moment. I'm going to turn off the engine. I think that's a really important lesson, I think, for screenwriters, and that is, even in your character's, let's say, darkest moment or most troubling moment, they should still be taking action. And I love that idea. I totally forgot about it until you mentioned it there, but I lit up because I love that idea that in that moment, Tom Hardy decides he's turning off the engine. It's an action that he takes. It's not, oh crap, fate has decided that I'm out of fuel now. It's, no, no, I'm done. It's time to switch off. And it's like the character I said earlier, getting up and walking into the water. He's not going to wait for somebody to shoot him, or he's not going to wait to starve to death, or he's not going to wait to be picked off by a plane. He's going to take action. Everybody in this movie is taking action. The boy, George, hasn't just been dragged along. He chose to come on board. His death isn't just because of random accident. It's because it's because they rescued somebody. They did something good, and that man, in his emotional state, reacted the way he did. And it's all people taking action through this movie. There's nothing passive for a movie that is essentially about people waiting to be rescued. There isn't a single passive moment in this movie. Even the moment where it's a guy just sitting on a beach waiting, he sees somebody else taking action themselves. And that's just really good screenwriting, for a movie with very little dialogue, for a movie that is very tied, and that where their hands are tied in terms of what they can do, because they have to be historically accurate as well to a point. They found a way to be really expressive and really and very cinematic in every respect. This isn't cinematic just because it's a war movie. It's cinematic because everyone in there is doing something, and they're doing something quite profound as well. So 2 points, and then we'll wrap up. Pacing. this is Christopher Nolan's shortest film, I believe. I want to
Yes,
say.
yes.
I'm not sure how long. I can't remember how long.
1 hour and 40 minutes.
It's 1 hour 40 minutes. Is it his shortest film? Like, is
Ye-
Memento shorter? I feel like Memento could be around that same length. But yeah, 1 hour and 40 minutes isn't that an insanely short movie for Christopher Nolan?
Yeah, and for a war movie, it is short,
For a war movie.
especially especially with that kind of storytelling. I think it's short, but it actually serves the purpose, and it got all the points, and it's it shows it in a very good way that you don't feel the drag, except the 1 week it took maybe the majority of the chunk of the film, but still we are as they progress, we progress in time as well. It's week, then it gets days, then we get to the hours. It's like you combined all these together. So but yeah, we enjoyed how it's been done, and it's a war movie that's much more about humans and emotion, and how they act in a very desperate times.
And it's the fact that, yeah, it's what the characters are doing that makes this film feel longer, because it does feel like a longer film. It doesn't feel like an hour and 40 minutes. And I remember watching it, in that cinema the first time. My hands were basically glued to my popcorn and my Coke, 'cause, no space to put them down or anything like that. And it was just going deaf. Every gunshot, I was like, oh no. Every time a plane came around, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna go. My hearing is just slowly, wearing away here. And but then the film ended, and I thought, or it felt like it was wrapping up. Things felt like it was wrapping up. I thought, this is strange. Like this, I expected I'd be here for another hour and a half at least. And it's yeah, it's brilliantly paced, and you don't feel like you're being shortchanged. And I think it just speaks to the discipline that Christopher Nolan has. I think sometimes he can get a little carried away with stuff. I think Tenet, he gets a bit carried away at times with Tenet. I think with The Dark Knight Rises, he got very carried away with certain things in that film that didn't need to be done. But there are moments like this where he shows so much discipline as a storyteller that you just think, yeah, anybody else would have said that film about people waiting for a week to get picked up should be a 3 hour movie. And when they're making a 3 hour Batman movie, which was longer than The Dark Knight Rises by about 20 minutes, I'd say. When you're making a 3 hour Batman movie and an hour and 40-minute Dunkirk movie, I think that's so interesting. I think that's so interesting from a screenwriting point of view, the way you're able to tell that story so effectively without needing even an hour and 45. Yeah, not every film needs to be long now more than
And
ever,
it's
and not yeah.
and it Yeah, and it's actually based on a lot of the scenes are just visuals. There's barely any dialogue. The dialogue only there to stitch the scenes together, and the characters in the scenes. They are only there to do a certain element that's not, it cannot be seen in, or showed in the scene. So it's a fill up, which is a good thing. So yeah, a lot of it is just about visuals, and he did a lot of visuals. We For me, I enjoyed the way he did it. It's very pure, it's very clear. It doesn't have a lot of things that clutter the screen at the same time. So that was really nice.
Yeah, no, I just think it's something that doesn't get enough credit in this film, is what they're able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And it is down to great structure, great knowing the stories you want to tell, and being very economical in how you weave it all together. It's the PTSD side of things. We're going to link that in with the civilians doing their part. We're going to take the fact that it wasn't just the English, it was also French as well trying to get away. And Kenneth Branagh is referring to that, but also we see a French soldier going undercover, and it's just that it's all of that combined. And they even find a way to work in Churchill's famous speech at the very end when they're reading it out, reading out the extract on the newspaper. I just think, yeah, really wonderful film. Okay, so thanks very much, Asim. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week with another Christopher Nolan analysis. Before we sign off, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net. Hit us up on social media. Links will be in the description, and do subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Just search for The Script Department wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, Asim.